Good evening and welcome to Across the Pitch. We're the soccer show for people who think Birkenhead is a kind of sandals.
Yes. Birkenhead.
We're not trying to stir up too much trouble in Birkenhead. Well, maybe Arran is, but we'll get to that later. And of course, the sandals would be Birkenstock, where Birkenhead is a city that is not in Liverpool. It's over at the end of the Isthmus and on the other side of the Merseyside River from Liverpool. And it is where the Tranmere Rovers play. And
Prenton Park Rovers, but okay, yeah, go ahead.
the Tranmere Rovers will be taking out Newport County in the finals of the League Two. And we actually have a whole episode planned tonight about the EFL Playoffs. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Arran? What are we going to talk about here tonight?
Well, okay, on tonight's show, it's a tale of do or die for these 6 teams. Will it be a tale of redemption and resurrection, or downfall and defeat? We look to see which of these teams will be on an upward trajectory and which will face yet another year in a league from which they were so close to escaping. There's a thin line between heaven and here, as it was once famously said. So stand by as we put our learned necks out and try to predict who will be the winners and who are Tin Pot in our promotion playoff preview predictions. But first,
make sure you head on over to Facebook and follow us at Across the Pitch. You can also find us on Twitter at Across Pitch and on Instagram at Across the Pitch. That's where you can interact with us during games and after games.
Did you like my Tin Pot bit, by the way?
Yeah. Thank you, and welcome to Across the Pitch. As always, my name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm here with my co-hosts,
Arran Ayres and
Matt Robards.
That's the one.
As we just mentioned in the intro, today is our EFL Playoff Finals preview. We have 3 different games that we're going to preview. The first we're going to talk about is League 2, then we'll talk about League 1, and then the Championship. And at the end of the show, we will do a brief bit on the Phoenix Rising and just a quick recap of some recent guests we've had on the show.
Yep.
But to start things off tonight, we're going to talk about the EFL League 2 game, which you may have already seen my preview on acrossthepitch.com/blog. And that is going to be featuring the Tranmere Rovers, who we mentioned in the intro, against Newport County, the Exiles, who are the team that, of course, we featured earlier in the season during their run to the FA Cup. What are you guys thinking about this matchup? I think it's going to be a doozy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You know what? Can I just say how good we are on picking these teams? Do you know what I mean? Like, didn't we just smash that? We were covering these teams well before the playoff positions were actually, even there. Like, we were covering these 2 teams, and I think we did pretty well in our coverage with those. Just, I'm going to toot our own horn there.
I'm following you, yeah.
We did pick Tranmere as our team of the month because we thought they had a shot to go far, and they've treated us well, don't you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, they might be up in League 1 here pretty soon.
I have been well and truly put in my place about Tranmere, I have to say. And I've been reached out via Twitter from a young lady by the name of Sue. And she said, the one thing that we want everyone to know can be summed up in one song. She's a Tranmere fan, by the way. So I'm just going to read this out to you. Do not be mistaken, do not be misled. For we are Scousers, we're from Birkenhead. So F your cathedrals and F your pierhead, because we are Scousers, we're from Birkenhead. So this is a team song that they sing, these supporters sing. And there's some real antagonism there, isn't there?
Have you seen Mike Dean up in there? Did you know that Mike
fuck
Dean
Mike Dean too, all right?
Yeah, he's a big time Tranmere supporter. He looked like he may have had a few beverages at that last match.
Oh, yeah, he probably did.
I always thought he was a Tottenham fan, hey?
unofficially.
Yeah, for those that don't know, there's a conspiracy theory amongst the gooners of the Arsenal, and they seem to think that he's got a bit of a bone with Arsenal, if you will. I don't know if that's true or not. I think the stats will actually defy that, but nevertheless, fun and games.
I believe what I've read is that yes, that Arsenal has actually won more of the head-to-head matchups that he's refereed. And if you don't know who Mike Dean is, he is, of course, a very famous referee at the Premier League. His most famous feat that he recently reached is he became the first referee in Premier League history to give out 100 red cards.
You know, I was watching this for weeks, and I think everyone else was as well. I happened to be watching his matches, and everyone was looking for this red card to come out. And it took a long time to get that 100. It was almost like he was a bit gun-shy.
He's a polarizing figure in English football for sure.
Yeah, absolutely is.
But we digress. So let's talk a little bit about the game now. If you've had a chance to look at my preview, you'll know that I did pick Newport County, and of course, I've been on their train for a little while now, and I wasn't going to jump off now. But the way that these two teams looked at the first round, I really think that this one could go either way. And I mean, certainly it's going to be one that I think is going to come down to the last minute. Both of these teams have players that step up big in big moments. Yeah. We're talking about, of course, Podge Almond, who scored the only goal for Newport in their first round win that came against Mansfield.
Yes.
And then, of course, on the Tranmere side, you have James Norwood, who scored the deciding goal for Tranmere in their win over Forest Green in the first round. He's a guy who's at 30 league goals on the season now, and he's a veteran with the team. He's in his fifth year with Tranmere, and possibly his last from some of the things that we've been reading online, but you know he's looking to, if this is his exit, to lead the team up to League One in his final game.
Yeah. Interesting that you say it's his final game. I haven't heard any rumors about that. That's curious.
His contract is up, and he might be moving on. It's
I see. Right.
So Phil, I was reading through your blog earlier and about this match, and I kind of had a question for you. Maybe you could dive into it a little bit here on the pod. You kind of noted in your five points that shouldn't be overlooked section there that Tranmere hasn't beaten Newport County since 1988. Do you think that's going to be weighing on them pretty heavy in this game?
Yeah.
I mean, here's how I would look at it. If this was a situation like American sports, where teams played each other every year, and it had been since 1988, I would say yes, that would be weighing pretty heavily. Ultimately, what you have with Newport County is they are a team that actually, in 1989, went completely bankrupt and had to forfeit their league status. They immediately reformed as a fan-owned team and played the very next season, but then they had to start off at non-league, work their way all the way back up. So if you look all the way back over that 30-plus year history to 1988, this is actually going to only be the fourth time that they've played. I don't really think that they're going to be looking at that so much. What they may look at is that they also haven't scored a goal, period, against Newport. The first game was a 1-0 Newport win earlier this year back in September. Their most recent game, which was at the end of March, was a 0-0 draw. In fact, the player that did score the Newport goal back in September is actually Fraser Franks, the defender who had to retire. There's actually not a player on either roster right now who has scored in this series this year so far.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Wow. Okay.
But everything could change at Wembley, right? I mean, that is a whole different beast.
Wembley. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you have to look for Almond and Norwood. I think both of these guys are going to get a goal. I mean, it's just what they do. They score in big games. The real difference maker that I think is the guy for Newport throughout their entire season throughout their FA Cup run and in the earlier round of the playoffs. It's been the unsung hero, has been their goalkeeper, Joe Day. Is what you have to look at is in a lot of these games, Newport has had to play a style where they were maybe coming from behind or late in the season, where they had to win games because they needed points to get into playoffs. This guy was out on an island a lot of times, and he would just make some of the most gasping, jaw-dropping saves that you've seen in some of these matches. He did save 2 penalties in the first round, which is the difference in why they're here to begin with. And I think, like we've said, so what you have is you have James Norwood, who's a 30-goal scorer. You have Podge Almond and Jamil Matt for Newport, who are each good for 15 during the year. So these teams have firepower. It's going to come down to who can stop the firepower, and Joe Day is that guy for me.
Wow, okay. Cool, good to know.
Yep, all right. Yep.
Phil, let me ask you another question. Out of these teams, which do you think's the most prepared right now? Which team has the squad that's capable of competing in League One?
Realistically, what you have to look at is Newport County. They're one of those low-budget teams, and going back to the FA Cup, as we documented then, they got 250,000 quid for being the furthest advancing League Two team in the FA Cup.
Right.
Not to be sneezed at.
They actually, I read one article, and now this was before the playoffs, and obviously they're going to make some money off of this, and certainly even more if they get promoted. But they turned a £90,000 sterling profit as a club this year. So if you look at that, 250,000 of that came from that FA Cup run. The only reason this team turned a profit was because of this. So, I mean, this is a team, like we said, fan-owned team, not from the biggest city. I mean, they're about 30 miles north of Cardiff, so you have Cardiff kind of taking over their territory. This is a team that's going to have to run on the Accrington Stanley kind of model. Now, we've seen that a team like Accrington Stanley can survive in League One, but it's going to be something where Newport County, if they do get promoted, they're going to have to look at shooting for 14th in League One like Accrington did this year. They're not going to go out and try and win.
Mm-hmm.
Tranmere, on the other hand, is a club that historically has been up a little bit higher in they've been as high as the second division. They did have a double demotion where they dropped all the way down to the National League. They're now looking at a chance at a double promotion. So this is a team that it seems to be on the Leyton Orient track where maybe they're ready to jump a few levels quickly. So Tranmere, I think certainly being in a place like Birkenhead, which is in the metropolis of Liverpool, they probably have a little bit better chance of generating the income to be a top of the table team immediately in League One than Newport would.
You know what? I certainly wouldn't discount the fan base in Wales. There, they can be quite a very partisan, very partial crowd, and don't worry, I think if they were to get up in a competition or in the leagues, they will certainly draw in the crowds, I suspect. I only know this, by the way, because you should see them follow their rugby. I mean, they have a very good Welsh team right now, but
and Newport does play at a rugby stadium, the Rodney Parade. Now, I do believe it's a rather limited capacity at the Rodney Parade. So, looking forward, I don't know if this is a possibility, if Newport's ever looking into moving on to their own grounds or not. But certainly that could be another thing hampering them, is the shared grounds.
Yep. And that certainly seems to have been an issue with Coventry this year as well, although that's not necessarily the rugby team's issue, more so the football club's issue. But anyhow,
I think that we done a pretty good discussion at this point on who the players are, what the teams are playing for, and things like that. So now it's the time that everybody's been waiting for, prediction time. Did either of you have any last words before we get into predictions on this game?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to go with Newport. I think just looking at the history between the two clubs, Tranmere kind of has this monkey on their back. It's tough because again, it's Wembley, it's the playoff finals, anything can happen. So I'm gonna go. Newport 2-1.
Yeah, you know what? I think, like the other two matches that we're going to preview here, there is nothing between these two teams. I feel it's really, really hard to predict who's going to win this. I suspect that you've already made your pick with Newport, Phil, and Matt. So I'm going to be the contrary one and say, yes, despite the crap that your fans have given me, Tranmere, I'm going to go with you guys. I think you might be battle-hardened. You're going to go 2 up in 2 years. Yeah, let's go with a 2-1 Tranmere victory.
All right. Okay.
Mark it down, and just for the record, as said in my article, I'm going with 3-2 Newport, and I'm going to go with Podge Almond scoring the winner.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Just for the record as well, I hope you're right, but I think you might be wrong.
Well, we've got another cracker of a match here heating up in League One, and these are a couple of massive clubs that are going to be meeting for a chance to go up to the championship. And you're writing about this one right now, right, Aaron?
Yes. So the promotion playoffs here in League One going up into the championship is between 2 ex-Premier League clubs. That is, of course, Sunderland A.F.C. and Charlton Athletic. These guys come from the opposite ends of the nation there, if you will. In England, Sunderland famously in the northeast. And of course, their slide down the tables, the English Football League tables, has been well noted in that comedy, Sunderland Till I Die. Charlton have been... I'm still making friends over there, by the way. Charlton... It'll be fun.
May as well be telling them that you're drinking a Newcastle.
I know. Yeah. Charlton, on the other hand, they've been well embedded in the lower leagues since 2007 when they got relegated from the Premier League. They're having a bit of a rubbish time of things of late, Charlton. They're not only in League One, which is their longest stretch in League One since about 1973, but they're looking to come back up. And I have to say, this is a fascinating playoff because this is replay of a Division 1 playoff in 1998. Yeah.
Oh, wow,
now, this is a really interesting thing about this, is that Charlton famously won that one on penalties back in the day, and I think that that's probably going to be the way that this game goes. Sunderland have been a little bit shaky coming into this. They've won 1 of 7, but they did beat former Premier League side Portsmouth 1-0 over aggregate during the playoff rounds.
I do want to chime in and say that the second leg of Sunderland-Portsmouth was the only game I was disappointed with in that opening round. Both of those teams just looked like they were playing on a field of mushy peas.
Yeah, you know what? And it means a lot to these sides, you know. Sunderland have come down 2 leagues in 2 years, right? They know how much this means. You're right, they're on mushy peas. They probably feel like they're wading through a swamp with that expectation of that city up there, you know?
George Honeyman really seems to be the one guy on their roster that he's the engine that drives that train. He's a local guy, too, that came up through their academy.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's do or die for Sunderland. I said a couple of weeks back that this is the nadir for both Sunderland and Portsmouth. If Sunderland loses this, that's their nadir. I'm sorry. That is the absolute bottom that these guys are going to get to. That weight of expectation of that town over there in Sunderland, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like, okay, so here's my prediction. I think Charlton have had an amazing run-in. They did have a tough game against Doncaster, which they won on penalties. I suspect, battle-hardened clubs as they are, I suspect that Charlton might just have the edge, and I suspect that Sunderland might get a little bit nervy because of that weight of expectation. And you know what? You can talk about all the players you want, but they've both got academy players in there. Charlton hasn't spent any money this year to get where they are. That's a fascinating stat. Sunderland are also relying upon academy players as well to get themselves up. They're both in a very similar boat. This is such a close match, and this is going to be really, really difficult to pick for me. And I don't, and even the betting markets over there in the UK can't do it. There is very little that they're putting between these teams. It's maybe $1 here, $1 there, not even. We're talking like 10 cents here or 10 pence there. You know what I mean? It's remarkable how close these teams are. And that's why I'm not going to talk about, who could possibly, who's going to be the standout player. I think who, as a team, has the grit on the day to go through. And I suspect the weight of expectation is going to be too much for Sunderland, and Charlton will go through on penalties. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you think that's just because they had the better run of form towards the end of the season?
No, I actually think that they're in equal standing right now, because Sunderland did overcome a very good Portsmouth side who they lost to in the Checkatrade Trophy.
Right.
Charlton, yes, has a better run in, but I suspect it's just that, as I said, it's that weight of expectation on the shoulders of those Sunderland players I think might be telling.
Yeah, do you think a lot of people, maybe in the Sunderland area and even just back in England, just kind of assumed that Sunderland would spend 1 year in League One and then come right back up to the Championship? And so that's that expectation, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Charlton doesn't have that issue. They've been up and down for the past, what are we now, 12 years between those two leagues. They know what it's like to be promoted. They're not strangers to that. Sunderland, they are. This is new territory for them. Well, in recent years, at least anyway, certainly in the Premier League era. Yeah, I suspect Charlton's probably a little bit more knowledgeable in promotion, and maybe wise heads or cooler heads will prevail there.
Do you think the docu-series adds any added pressure, because now they know that this is all being documented and watched around the world?
Without a doubt. I mean, if they get promoted, the series will be cancelled. If they stay down, the series will be cancelled. I don't know, man.
So are we giving predictions here? Is that?
Yeah, let's do predictions. Yeah, this is such a tough one to call.
So you're saying Charlton on penalties. Man, I'm torn on this one. I want Sunderland to go back up. I'm going to go 1-0 Sunderland. George Honeyman to score. Okay. The local boy playing the hero.
What a story that would be.
And you know what? I think you're bloody right, because this is Hollywood now, isn't it? Yeah. Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, good call.
I'm going to go with Charlton. I'll be honest, in the first round, I thought Charlton was going to roll over Doncaster, and Doncaster really showed something in that second game. But what showed for me even more was the toughness of Charlton, where they're not a team that's going to come in just thinking they're going to roll over and get punched in the mouth and fall down. Charlton is a team that's going to get punched in the mouth, get back up, and punch you harder. And I think that Sunderland might have a little bit more of a glass jaw. I'm going to go with 2-1 Charlton. I'm going to say that Sunderland scores first.
Ooh.
Then Charlton comes back and equalizes, and then scores the winner in extra time.
Wow.
All right. That's very detailed.
It is. But the way that the betting market is looking, I think, that's as good a guess as anyone's, really.
Yep.
The moment that most of us have been waiting for is the game that Matt has been writing about, where Aston Villa will take on ʻdɑːrbi County.
Yeah, this is what should we call this one? Chelsea Classico?
Yeah.
The Frank Lampard, John Terry duel. There's so many connections here with that Chelsea team. You got Tammy Abraham over there at Villa, Mason Mount, Fico Tomori playing for ʻdɑːrbi. So, this is a good one, man. Both of these teams played some great semifinals. Aston Villa come through 2-2 West Brom on aggregate, goes to penalty kicks. Villa wins 4-3 on penalties. Tammy Abraham with the one to send them to Wembley. That game saw everything, right? The goal at home for West Brom, and then the red card in the 88th minute. It was just a great great match to watch. And Villa kind of prevails there. And then the next day, Derby versus Leeds did not disappoint at all.
Wow, was that a cracker?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Leeds go to Pride Park, come out 1-0 winners, and I thought that was kind of it. I thought Derby was kind of done and dusted. And then Leeds come out and score, in the 24th minute. And, again, I was thinking, man, this is it. And then they just turned it on. You had Jack Marriott in the 45th. And then Mason Mount puts them tied on aggregate in the 46th, and it just goes back and forth. And we saw some red cards in that game. Derby comes out 4-3 winners on aggregate, and so now we get the Chelsea Classico, and it's going to be a good match on a week from today. We're recording this on May 20th, and so these two teams meet at Wembley on May 27th, and so it's going to be a great matchup. And I don't know. I have my feelings, but I'm going to kick it to you guys first before I kind of reveal what I think is going to happen.
I think this is another one of these games. I can't pick between the two. There is some history between the two clubs. Derby had an amazing win against Leeds. Aston Villa, they kind of got there, didn't they?
Yeah, they kind of squeaked in.
Yeah, they did. I mean, that was a good West Brom side. They happened to have 2 red cards in both of those legs, which certainly helped. But even so, the second leg there went to penalties. I mean, that was an excellent series. Man, I don't know. I have to say, and I called it 2 weeks ago when I said Derby County was going to go up. I think Derby County is going to go up. I was being contrary, as I want to be, on this show. But I think it's Derby. I think Derby's going up. And it's going to be another 2-1 match. There you
go. Well, I'll tell you what, like you said, Aaron, and like you said, Matt, these two teams, there's not a lot between them. They both came out of just gut-wrenching semifinal fixtures. I mean, these two teams, they've both been punched in the mouth and got back up. I mean, that's very obvious. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do here is, since I don't have a better reason, I'm going to go with our friend Callum Williams, who will be working with us here in June. I don't want to give too much away about that, but I'm going to go with our friend Callum Williams. I'm going to go with Aston Villa, and I want to see a claret parade on the way back to the Premier League.
All right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Villa was there last year against Fulham.
That's
they
right.
lost, and then we all know what happened to Fulham. I think Villa has the squad that's ready to compete next year in the Premier League. Derby does have a lot of players that are in on loan or on short deals, and some players that have been vital for them that they're not going to get back next year, I don't believe. So I think my gut right now says Villa goes through 2-0.
Okay.
And so here's my thing, right? So Villa and Derby met twice this year. 7 goals were scored in those 2 matches. All of them were scored by Villa.
Right.
So Derby has not had a good showing against Villa this year.
How many by Grealish?
You know what? I don't have that on me. I'm not 100% sure.
That's one for you, Matt.
First game. But and then let's see. Grealish scored once. Out of those 7.
That was a question I had for you, Matt. Since you're pretty deep into the championship, do you think that Grealish will stay with Villa if they get promoted, or do you think he's gone either way?
I think so. Grealish he's an academy player.
Yeah,
he's homegrown. He stuck with the club last year after they lost out on promotion. He's been captaining the side. I think if they get promoted, he stays. I think it's tough. So you'll see a lot of Premier League teams not really want to take a chance on him because he hasn't been tested in the Premier League. Yeah, I think it's the same thing with like Ryan Sessegnon from Fulham. Tottenham were interested in him last summer. Those were the reports, but maybe they were just unsure. They wanted to see how he would do this year. Obviously, Fulham was completely garbage. But they're still interested in him because they were impressed with how he performed in the Premier League. I think Jack's going to have to do something very similar. But we'll see. I think he sticks with them if they're promoted. If they're not promoted, we might see, kind of a mid-table Premier League team come in for him, sort of like we saw with Leicester coming in for James Maddison.
Maybe an Everton.
Just a mid-table team, is kind of taking that chance on him. But he's a top player. But I just think, again, my gut right now, I think Villa goes 2-0. The only thing that's making me hesitant is Frank Lampard will make changes to change a game.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it against Leeds in the last playoff game. And so I think that could be kind of the wild card there. But again, I'm going to have to go Villa.
What about Frank Lampard? Is he going to be back with Derby next year, or is Sorry going to get sacked?
Yeah, man, that's the crazy thing. Well, a lot of the reports are Sarri's going to Juventus. Juventus is working hard to try and get him.
Yeah,
which is very interesting to me. So to pull it all back, I think Aston Villa gets promoted.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. All right. So what was your prediction? What was the scoreline?
I'm going to go 2-0 Villa.
Okay.
2-0.
So that makes you more of a John Terry fan than a Frank Lampard fan. Would that be right?
Man, it's tough. I think the wild card is the way Frank Lampard has shown he can change a game, making an adjustment on the fly. I mean, you look at that Villa match, and he made a switch with Jack Merritt, came in right towards the end of the first half.
The Leeds game we're talking about.
In the Leeds game. Yeah, right towards the end of that first half, they were down 1-0, 2-0 on aggregate. You don't see a lot of coaches making a change in the first half unless they're forced into it, but
right, there was no injury. He just made the change.
Right. Frank brings on Jack Marriott. Boom, he scores in the 45th minute. Then he scores again in the 85th minute. And so you just see that change. The system's changed a little bit. The formation's changed. And all of a sudden now, Derby's just kind of operating on a different level.
Actually, I was very, very impressed with that change.
And so I think that's kind of that wild card where if he gets it right, if he makes the right selections and he makes those changes, I think we could be looking at maybe a 2-1 Derby win.
Okay. Interesting.
I think that the game could go either way. I think any of these three games can go either way. But just to kind of reiterate, my three picks are going to be Newport, Charlton, and Villa. And who were your guys' three picks again, just to kind of wrap this up before we talk a little Phoenix Rising?
I'm going to go Newport, Sunderland, and Villa.
So we're probably going to be wrong on a couple of these, Matt. So I've gone Tranmere, Charlton, and Derby County.
All right, man. I like it.
It'll be interesting. I'm really looking forward to this round of matches. This is fantastic. You can watch all of these games on ESPN Plus in the United States. Thank you, ESPN Plus, for your $5 a month fee. This is amazing. Amazing coverage of football for that amount of money.
Yes. It has been a great promotion playoffs this year in all the leagues.
Made my week last week. There was one game on every day during the week, and like I said, the only one that was not great was the Sunderland Portsmouth. Every other game was penalties. It was back and forth. It was just proper football.
Absolutely. You can catch those games. So the EFL League 2 playoff is at 7 a.m. That's Arizona time. So that is 10 a.m. Eastern, Saturday, May 25th. That is between Newport County and Tranmere. Football League 1 game can be seen Sunday, May 26th at 10 a.m. Eastern. That's between Charlton and Sunderland. And finally, the Premier League playoff, the team that will go up into the Premier League next year, will be between Aston Villa and Derby County. You can catch that Memorial Day Monday in the United States, May 27th at 10 a.m. Eastern. So they all kick off at the same time on different days. Don't miss them. You've got no excuse. It's a long weekend, America.